Welcome to episode 47 of Accessible Finance, where we demystify personal financial topics and answer your questions so you leave saying, we'll get it out. I'm Eric Johns.
I'm Rachel John.
Let's dive in.
All right. So we ended up having
Why are you so
more
happy? Why are we laughing so much?
because you're giggling and I don't understand why.
Because it's funny.
Okay.
This is fun.
So
We're having a good time.
we started yesterday. We started our last episode with Eric's responses to quotations and articles that I have kind of found,
Curated.
yes,
Well done.
from around the internet. Um, we are going to continue because there was a lot more Eric gets to react to.
Huh.
Okay. So Eric,
Yes.
I
Rachel.
perused
Okay.
on a forum that was purporting to be helpful to people
Okay.
looking for financial advice.
Right. There are forums for this? What are we talking, like Bogleheads forums?
No, I did go on the Bogleheads forums, although I didn't see
Those
anything.
guys are pretty sensible.
I was
I
going to
like
say I
them.
didn't see anything super alarming. And it's not that I was just looking for things that were alarming,
Okay.
but things that um could be misinterpreted as
Got it.
well. Um, but no, these were just kind of curated from various forums. There was a
All right. Hit me with them. What do we got?
yeah. Okay. So debt is always bad and you need to avoid it at all costs.
Oh, I've heard this one quite a bit.
Yeah.
I think one of the more prominent, like I guess you can't call him an influencer, but I want to say Dave Ramsey. One of his plans or one of his things is don't use credit cards, right?
Yeah. And so
And
that
and
was
look,
actually in an Investopedia article that I also had later on that says,
oh, I'm sorry.
no, that's good because it feeds into this. It's the same.
Okay,
So it's the same concept that's being
don't
touted
use
on
debt
various
essentially,
things.
right? Don't use debt.
Um,
His is
pay with
explicitly credit cards.
crash. Pay with crash.
Crash, yeah, that would be interesting.
Thank you. Pay with cash, not credit.
Okay,
Also, you know who else I came across that says it? Oh my gosh, who is the guy that screams all the time on the TV?
Kramer.
Yes.
Okay,
So Kramer also had said
that
something.
surprises
He
me
said
quite a bit.
cash is king.
Okay,
Um, and was saying that it was something along the lines of the fact that the only people who
that's got to be some timing the market,
debt.
dry powder type thing, right?
I mean, he was talking a lot just about how debt is really chasing your tail kind of a thing,
Okay.
right? Now the quote that I came across from him wasn't dated. It's very possible that it was I mean, he's been there for quite some time, right?
Okay. All right. Well, let's hit it. Okay. So
But there have
debt,
been a number of people kind of touting this idea
right.
that debt is
Debt's always
always
bad.
bad.
It's anathema to financial success. Let's never
Correct.
use it. Okay. So first, if we're going to avoid debt at all costs, we're probably not going to do things like own a home, right? So that's if you want to do things in America before you have the dollars, you're going to need debt, right? Like
Yeah.
you're not going to just be able to buy a $500,000 house in cash coming out of college or after 2 years on the job, right? So that's sometimes we're going to have to use it. I dislike the idea that we don't use credit cards at all. Credit cards are objectively good, and debt can be thought of as similarly good. I wouldn't say debt is objectively good, but when we're talking about like credit cards, for example, if you're going to use a credit card and you're going to pay it off every month, you gain 2% or whatever your cash back rate is, right? I think we've said it before, we use Citi Double Cash, which is just a flat 2%, right? So you like 1%. It doesn't matter. The idea is you get 2% more dollars than you would if you did not use a credit card. Now, add that to the convenience and everything else. If you use it responsibly, it's objectively better to have 2% more money than not, right? Like
Correct.
there's not a lot of you don't have to do math there. It's just better. It's good to use credit cards as long as you can use them responsibly. You
And
also would gain the additional interest
understand.
you would earn on the account
Correct.
before having to pay it. So
You also need to understand not all credit cards are created equal either. Right. So not all debt is
sure,
created equal. Not all credit cards are created equal.
right. But I mean, as long as you're using it responsibly, you can. I mean, you can essentially I couldn't even tell you offhand what the APR is on the City Double Cash that we have because
We
we've
never use
literally never
it.
missed a payment. So
Right.
it's not relevant. Like I'll never owe it. Like, you know what I mean? It's set on auto pay, you're paying the
Correct.
bill in full. Like it's all good. As long as you have as long as you understand where your finances are, you're good to go with credit cards. If you're in and look, to be fair to Dave Ramsey, right? If you are if you're trying to detox, right, as he calls it, I believe, or if you're trying to like rehab yourself financially, if you've already been in credit card debt and you're having trouble and things like that, we understand like
Hmm.
the desire to like steer you away, kind of like an AA type thing, right?
Correct.
Like you're not going to touch a drop, even though socially drinking is
Right.
completely fine for most people. If you're recovering, it's probably not the best.
And I think that
I get it.
mentality is also applied to people who are newly independent and who they feel have it established healthy spending habits, right?
Sure, sure.
So
The idea though
people can be afraid.
is just, only sis speak in absolutes, right?
Yeah,
Like to quote from Star Wars. We just don't want to say all debt is bad, all
right.
credit card usage is bad. Like all credit card usage is objectively not bad.
And
Like
in all honesty, there are many things that you cannot partake in without building credit. Like they're just
correct. It's
so
actually yeah, it's beneficial for a
it's
number of reasons.
it's disadvantage
Um
like contagious not to have
Right,
credit.
but if we even if we just exclude credit card debt, we're talking about
Correct.
general debt, right? Like you're going to need mortgages.
Yep.
Many people are going to need car loans. I would argue,
Mhm.
I would actually concede the point that I would love it if all of our clients could pay for cars in cash. Taking a loan, especially in this
Yeah.
environment where you're taking about a 7-8% loan out for a depreciating asset, which is a
Yep.
vehicle, is probably not great. It's not wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not
That's
going to
fair.
feel good. And
Okay. Thoughts on a business line of credit? Business loan.
I mean, I think all these things need to be. I would just caution against rules of thumb for this, right? Like, so
Or
you'd want a business plan. You want to see what we're look where our sources. It's essentially just a business plan.
yeah.
We want to know exactly how you're planning on repaying this debt. What happens if you don't? What are my worst case scenarios? Right? You don't need to think about the best case scenarios. That's not relevant. But like, what happens in the worst case scenarios? Do you have uh, money elsewhere that you could use to
Yeah.
to offset this
What's
or
your
to
safety
pay it?
net look
Yeah,
like? Right.
exactly. Like, is your family going to step in and help? What's
Yeah.
going to happen?
Right. Agreed. Okay. So another one on that same forum being touted was that renting is always throwing money away. Buying a home's always better because it's an investment.
That's interesting. That's I don't agree. Disagree. Right. So some people really enjoy renting if you know that first always buying a home is better. That's essentially believing that the real estate market's going to move up in perpetuity. It also, will- I mean, renting is a way to hedge against multiple risks,
Hmm.
not just market risks from
Uh,
pricing
life
fluctuations
risk.
I'm sorry, in the real estate markets, right?
Yeah.
But also if your AC breaks, if your hot water heater breaks, if your roof leaks, like all of these things fall on the homeowner or the landlord. And if
Hmm.
you're a renter, they don't fall on you, right? So you can do that. Additionally, there are some
Flood
people
insurance.
yeah, it's also more predictable. Typically, it's more predictable, right?
Yeah.
So if I know that I'm renting, I'm paying essentially what you would. Maybe you would say that's the same thing as a mortgage payment, right? But I mean, how many friends have we had that have had huge plumbing issues or huge roofing issues, and
It
it's
even happened
15,
when
20
I heard
grand,
the women in the grocery store talking about how
right?
one of them was going to have to like go back to work or even dip into her retirement savings because they could not replace just some of the
Hmm.
like the air conditioning unit. I think it was like a washing machine, but that's exactly like you can still get renter's insurance to cover your stuff,
Hmm.
which would be a flat expense,
Correct.
but you're not having to deal with the same element of in like unpredictable expenses that would come from being homeless.
Right. There's another actual tangential myth, right? That is, if you are renting, you can't retire. You need to own your home to be able to retire. At least I've heard that. It was one. It was one of my late father used to say a lot. It's like
Really?
yeah, he used to think that you need to own the house to retire, which is nonsense. Really,
Wow.
it's just an extra expense, right? It's a monthly expense. If your mortgage is 1,500 a month, you just have to you enter 1,500 a month into your retirement
Correct.
planning. Inflation adjusted at whatever rate you think it's going to
It's
be.
also can be really tricky if you are planning down the line to get married, have a family. If you're not buying a house that factors that in, or if you're buying a house that does factor that in, that doesn't happen, you might end up in a house that doesn't necessarily suit your needs either right now or won't suit your needs in the future.
Right.
So there's a lot of uncertainty there. So
Correct. It's individual. We
correct.
just need to avoid the absolutes, right? Just
Agreed. All right. And the last one that was on that forum, investing in gold is a surefire way to protect your wealth.
that's no. No.
Just
No
no.
commodity, including gold, is guaranteed to hold its value. Gold markets have fluctuated over time. It's empirically been thought of as a hedge against inflation.
Mhm.
However, it's not quite as useful of a hedge as the stock markets, equity markets. But no, it's just simply not true. It's not true, right? Like gold markets are going to fluctuate over time. I mean, that's
What about
the claim.
Bitcoin?
I was going to say the claim is not all that dissimilar from insert commodity here, right?
Right.
Like,
That's a
no,
yeah.
it's not. Like, humans could suddenly decide, you know what, gold's not that important to us anymore, and what does it actually do, right? Like, it
Right.
might be used in some like
Right.
technological semiconductor type stuff capacity,
Exactly.
but I
And
can't imagine that can't be replaced by another
that's
metal.
not to say that it's not a worthwhile investment or something that you should automatically not invest in. But to assume that anything is a surefire anything
Yeah.
is
We're also just not huge proponents
yeah,
of investing in things that do not produce value or increase value or have any plan to provide utility to the world over time. Does that
yeah.
make any sense, right? Like, so if you own
There's
a
no
pile
growth
of
plan for it.
gold, like it's not actually doing anything for you. Whereas if you own shares of, say, Apple, Apple is profit maximizing. They're trying to do things to make more dollars in the
Right.
future. It's a company. It's going to be uh,
They're incentivized
maximize
to
shareholder wealth is literally their
yes,
objective.
exactly.
Whereas, like, and they're doing that through their processes, through all of
Correct.
the decisions that they make as a company. Gold doesn't. It just sits there and it's valuable. It's valuable because we say it's valuable. And we hope that other people will be willing to pay more over
Mhm.
time and in the future
We
than
hope
we
that
pay
we
for it.
always
It's the bigger
continue to
fool
say that
theory, right?
it's valuable.
Right.
All right, so this next one comes from a financial columnist,
Okay.
Charles, last name Jaffe,
Okay.
Jaffe,
Don't
don't
know.
know. But his quote says, "It is not your salary that makes you rich, but your spending habits."
Kind of like that idea, although it's not. I like the idea that spending drives
Yeah,
the ship. I think that's correct, but obviously it has its limits, right? It's again one of those things. If you make 30K a year, it's going to be really hard. I mean,
sure,
especially if you're a household that makes 50K or so, and it's a couple earning a combined 50K AGI, and you have two or three kids.
right.
Good luck. I mean,
It's
like
overly simplified for sure.
even if you're eating rice and beans, it's still going to be pretty brutal.
Yeah. But I did pick, I
I
like
agree with that though.
I like the idea that if you're not talking outliers
Sure.
as far as salaries, like,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
If you're not comparing, someone making 30,000 and someone making 500,000, if the salaries are remotely like
Yeah, if you're like if you're near the US median of about 70K,
yeah,
okay, you can, right? If it's a couple with two
yeah.
individuals making 70K, right? You're
Okay,
at
yeah, yeah.
140,
Yeah,
right? You can theoretically, like if you're willing to live frugally
right,
and you could spend, maybe 80 even a year, there's a path. There's a
right.
pretty clear path there.
And I think that sometimes, if you have that job with that big paycheck, it's very easy to assume I'm rich, which leads you into this false sense of
Yeah.
security and spending, which prevents you from actually becoming wealthy.
Right, it's more common for us actually to see frugality lead to wealth than high earning.
Correct.
Does that make
So I was
sense?
talking about that the other day.
Yeah, the other side of the coin I mean, the earning side of the coin typically
It exists,
involves yeah,
but
it absolutely does, but you see the people that are making 150 plus on an individual level
yeah.
get used to eating out at restaurants whenever
Right.
they want. Uber Eats is like on speed dial. Like they'll just do things that are going to
Oh,
generate
Lord.
what?
And that's not to say
It's
that
not wrong. It's not
correct.
objectively wrong for
Correct.
sure, but it's just less likely to make you rich in the
I think it's
future.
just exactly understanding the long-term implications of embracing that lifestyle now. I think
Correct.
that's all.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. There was a rule of thumb. It's been touted on countless things. I don't even know where to attribute it at this point because Elizabeth Warren might have said something about it at some point to try to educate the American public, but it has been so popularized across everything. I don't even know where the origin is, but it's the rule of thumb of the 50-30-20 budgeting, right? The needs, wants, savings.
I must have avoided financial media too much, maybe? I don't know. Or
It
maybe I
is
should be happy about this. I don't This
okay.
is not a rule that we were taught.
So this is everywhere. And I don't think it is a rule that is in academia. It
Okay.
is a rule that has kind of proliferated across social media. I think it is trying to help people who don't have a budget to come up with a very simple way of
Right.
being like, whatever I'm taking in,
Yeah.
right? Post tax, right? I'm talking 50% of it goes to my needs.
Okay.
30% of it has to go to my wants, and 20% of it will go to my savings.
There's going to be a significant amount of blurred lines there between the needs and the wants, right? Like,
Correct.
I need to eat. Do I need to go eat sushi for every meal?
Yes,
No. I mean,
I do.
yes. I like where your head's at, and let's do
But
that.
I do think that, even our kids will kind of talk to us in terms of like needs and wants. And it does get really tricky because like they need to go to school.
Right.
Do they need they need to have a backup,
Right.
but do they
I mean, you
need
could even
the
go to like
basic?
public versus
Right,
private schools, right?
exactly.
And that's a huge cost there.
Especially down here.
Yeah, you might need a TV. Like, but
Correct.
if we're not even let's forget the needs wants semantics. Let's
Right.
assume we're not even going to participate in that argument. I would kind of want to set that aside and just say like, I think the way I would want to answer the question is 20% a sufficient savings rate? Okay, so forget the other side. Like we're going to spend 80% of what we make.
80% of our money.
And
Yeah.
then I would want individuals to think about whether we're talking gross or net. So before or after tax is all I'm talking about there, right? So
Correct.
just
The
account
rule
for the
here was
tax.
the after tax, right? So
Okay.
20% after tax would be your savings.
Okay. I mean that's a pretty substantial savings
Yeah.
rate. We'd be reasonably happy with that. The thing is, it depends, right? Like everyone hates the answer. I dislike giving that answer.
Yeah.
Okay, please, I promise that I and we do dislike giving the answer. It depends. Nobody wants to hear it. The reason it depends, right? So why would we say that? Well, if you're in your 60s and you want to retire, let's say you're willing to work till 70, but you want to retire somewhat soon, and you have almost no savings, 20% might not be enough, right? We
Mhm.
might have to develop a plan where you're going to be stuffing away half of what you make or something like that, right? Like some acceleration. We're going to be stuffing our employer plan and then a traditional IRA after that,
Right.
Roth IRA after that. We're going to have to be doing something to get you there where you want to be, to
Mhm.
get you across the finish line. So that looks a lot different than, 20% might not be enough if somebody's spending habits look like they have no end in sight. They have a tremendous amount of debt. Um,
I
so yeah,
think
those are the two scenarios where 20% might not be
correct.
enough. There's also the scenario where there are some independently wealthy people, some people that are financially independent, right? Or I shouldn't say independently wealthy. What I mean is financially independent. Maybe they've been saving their whole career. Maybe they're super frugal. Okay. And they come to us and they're in their, late 40s, early 50s, somewhere in that ballpark. They're even 60s, right? And they just have tons of dollars.
Right.
And they're like, and I'm saving 20%. And we might say to them, hey, look, if it
Mhm.
increases your happiness not to,
Right. Go
don't.
for it.
You're good here.
And I think that that's the most important thing. And then the reason that I ended up including it here is that to assume that year to year, like every year is going to be something that can fit into this breakdown is just unrealistic.
Mhm.
So the reality is that, like, as you get married or divorced or have kids, as you get new jobs, as you make a new company, as you buy a house, as things happen in your life, you're going to have ebbs and flows in your life. And so
Sure.
there will be years that maybe
Yeah.
those percentages are adjusted. And as long as you're looking
So you're gonna have to purchase capital
holistic,
assets and down
correct,
payments on houses,
correct.
right? Those things happen.
Like the
Huge
tightest
medical
money
bills.
ever was with us was when we had all 3 of our like, I mean, trying to put all 3 of them into some type of
Yeah, I
daycare
was
so
gonna
that we
say.
could keep working. It was just absolutely wild, and I think that if we're looking at things in a vacuum of, like, every paycheck I have to do 50, 30, 20, I think it's great as far as, like, mentally conceptualizing the idea of being cognizant of savings,
Yeah,
but maybe one year you don't hit the numbers that you need to. If you know you're not going to, but you have a plan for
sure.
overall getting on track, that's good. That's okay.
I agree. And to kind of put a bow on it, just to 20% savings rate is pretty good. Okay. Like we're pretty happy with a 20% savings rate on
That's good.
average.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Like if we're trying to use a rule of thumb and we have to use a rule of thumb and we want to say 20% savings rate, great. All right.
Yeah,
We're not unhappy with 20% savings rate
for
in
sure.
in 90% of the cases, maybe.
Absolutely agree. All right, perfect. There is a logger,
Okay.
a lawyer. It's called A Lawyer and Her Money, and her quote is, I mean, she's got like 20 different quotes, and it's really entertaining, if nothing else. But the quote
How
was,
did you find all
I love that. It was really
this?
interesting. So her quote is, "Bargain hunting is what's making you broke."
That's gotta be near the top of the list of things that don't need to be said. What?
So okay, let me elaborate. It was on a list of 20 things, right? Where um she is very like culture like she's Asian, she's very aware of certain things that she does culturally that may not fit the norm. So she's very anti rule of thumb in
Okay.
general, right?
Alright.
So from her experience, what she says is basically that she's watch colleagues, friends, family members who are living for a bargain, who will buy out Amazon Prime Day like it's their
Okay.
job, who will
Look, I can
go
get behind that.
to any store that says like 50% off stuff. And so she's like, if you're buying because it's a good deal versus buying it because it was on the list of things you needed, that's what's putting a dent
I
in things.
agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think that is
Yeah.
great statement. I just don't think that that's exclusive. It's
It's
just
not
not applicable to most people. I don't even buy I don't even bargain
Okay,
shop. Period.
disagree
You think wait, do
completely.
you think I bargain shop?
No,
Okay, all right.
no,
We were
no,
about to live we were about to have an interesting
no,
conversation
no.
in front of everyone.
Disagree
Okay,
completely that it is not applicable to most people.
really? Okay.
I love you, but
Thanks.
I think
Love you
that
too.
you
That was really nice. Did y'all hear that? That was great.
think you struggle greatly to understand that Eric's world isn't always like the reality for other
That
humans.
was just the best world.
Okay. So I do think
Okay.
now granted our friends are different, right? Like I tend to be friends with more females, you tend to be friends with more male. Um I do think that on the whole, people are really drawn to a good sale. It might be I'm not going to buy something solely because it's on sale, right? But it might be that like I see something that's on sale, I'm like, you know
Just follow it
what? I
until it
really
goes on
do
sale.
need a mop. Like
Okay.
it might seeing something sometimes triggers this. TikTok has gone from social media videos and pictures to TikTok shop, and now you can buy all these things on sale. It's wild. And I think that the um idea like the Amazon Prime sale, the number of people that I had who had found what they wanted, saved them,
Mhm.
but started looking at what the price was before Amazon Prime Day and then on Amazon Prime Day and realized that on Amazon
Yeah,
Prime
half of
Day
what happens is
it
they
was more
just inflate
expensive.
the price and then discount it, right? Like,
Yeah, but even after they discounted it, it was still more expensive
that's
than it
funny
was 5 days
and
before.
unsurprising.
Correct. So you should be proud of me. I bought zero things on Amazon Prime Day this
So
year.
proud.
Not
Yeah,
that I ever bought a ton,
so the quote is
but
like
yeah,
the sentiment there is sensible,
yes. The
essentially,
quote
right?
is just, I think, very clickbaity, buzzy, like it
Yeah.
tries to oversimplify things like most of these do. But I think that there's some merit in the idea that if we're buying not because it's something that we've already identified as a need or want,
Mhm.
right? We're going back to our needs and
Yeah.
wants, but we're buying it because we see it and we're like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like if we're opening up our eyes or our thoughts to buying something that we wouldn't have bought otherwise
Mhm.
because it is on sale, that's where we end up realizing at the end of the month that our shopping category is double what it should be
Correct. I mean,
in our
if you were gonna
budget.
spend $0 on something,
Correct.
then any expenditure on said
Mhm.
thing is an increase of infinity, right?
Correct. So that $500 vacuum that's on sale for 350 is still 350 more
More
than
than
you
you
would
were
have
gonna
spent.
spend on a vacuum, right?
Correct.
Yeah, you didn't need it.
Exactly. I mean,
Right.
that's
No,
the
I think that's a good point that she's making there. I just not I don't love the quotes, right? I just don't love the
thing.
absolutes.
Well, that's exactly why I have them
The
here
one I
because
like the most is time in the market beats timing the market.
correct. That is your go-to.
It's a good one.
I agree.
It's a good one.
And so far, I think of all of the quotes that we have had, your favorite one has been the not your salary, but spending habits just because of the conversation I think that it prompts.
Sure.
But yeah.
All right,
All
guys.
right.
Well, thanks for
We're gonna
listening.
have to do part three.
Oh, all right, good. I'm excited. All right. If you enjoyed today's episode, please review the show. And if you have any topics you'd like discussed or financial problems you would like solved, email us at podcast@equilibriumfp.com or visit our website, equilibriumfp.com. Till next time.